I still remember the smell of pine needles baking in the August sun when our bus pulled up to Camp Redwood. The air tasted different up in those mountains, cleaner somehow, like it hadn't been breathed by enough people yet. I pressed my face against the window and watched the tall trees swallow us whole as we drove deeper into the forest. My name is Alex, and I was 17 that summer. I'd signed up for this environmental camp thing, mostly because my best friend Maya convinced me. She was the outdoorsy type, always talking about nature and conservation. I was more of a stay inside and play video games type, but I figured 2 weeks away from home before senior year couldn't hurt. The bus lurched to a stop in front of a cluster of cabins that looked like they'd been standing since the 70s. Peeling paint, sagging porches, the works. Our counselor, a college kid named Derek with a clipboard and an overly enthusiastic smile, started calling out cabin assignments. Maya grabbed my arm as we climbed off the bus. "This is going to be amazing," she said, her dark eyes bright with excitement. 2 weeks of hiking, swimming in the lake, campfires every night. "Yeah, amazing," I muttered, swatting at a mosquito that had already found me. We hauled our bags to cabin 7, which we'd be sharing with 4 other girls. Inside it smelled like mildew and old wood. The bunks were metal frames with thin mattresses that had probably given 1,000 campers before us back problems. I claimed a bottom bunk near the window and started unpacking. That's when I met Rachel. She took the bunk above mine, moving with this quiet efficiency that made me think she'd done this kind of thing before. She had red hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and the kind of pale skin that burns easily. When she caught me looking, she smiled. "First time at camp?" she asked. "Is it that obvious? You've got that deer in headlights look." She laughed, but not meanly. "Don't worry, I've been coming here for 3 summers. It's actually pretty cool once you get used to it." The other girls filtered in. There was Jamie, who talked non-stop about her boyfriend back home, and twins named Sarah and Sophia, who seemed to communicate in their own language. Maya took the bunk next to mine, still grinning like she'd won the lottery. That first night, Derek gathered all 30 of us around a massive fire pit in the center of camp. The flames cast dancing shadows across everyone's faces, and the smoke stung my eyes. He stood there in his camp t-shirt, looking like every youth counselor ever, and started telling us about the rules. Stay on marked trails. Buddy system at all times. Don't wander off after dark. The usual stuff. "This forest is beautiful," Derek said, gesturing toward the darkness beyond our circle of light, "but it's also wild. People have gotten lost out there, some for days. A few years back, a camper ignored the rules and went exploring on his own at night. Search party found him the next morning, miles from camp, completely incoherent. Kept muttering about something following him through the trees." A few kids laughed nervously. Maya rolled her eyes at me, trying to scare us on the first night. Classic. But I noticed Derek wasn't smiling when he said it. The next few days fell into a rhythm. We'd wake up to the sound of a bell clanging at 7, stumble to the mess hall for breakfast that tasted like cardboard, then spend the day on various activities. Hiking, canoeing, learning about local wildlife. It was actually kind of nice, despite my initial resistance. Maya was in her element, and even I had to admit, there was something peaceful about being surrounded by trees, instead of screens. Rachel became our unofficial guide. She knew all the trails, could identify every bird call, and seemed to know exactly where to step to avoid twisting an ankle on loose rocks. She had this calm presence that made you feel safe, like nothing bad could happen as long as she was around. On the 4th night, we were sitting around the fire pit again, when one of the guys from cabin 3, a kid named Tyler with a backwards baseball cap, stood up with a flashlight. "Anyone want to check out the old ranger station?" he asked, grinning. "It's just past the ridge trail. Supposed to be abandoned." Derek immediately shut that down. "Absolutely not. That area's off limits. The trail's not maintained, and it's too easy to get turned around in the dark." "Come on, man," Tyler said. "We're not little kids." The answer is no. Derek's voice had gone hard. "Everyone stays in camp after dark. No exceptions." Later, back in our cabin, Maya sat on my bunk and whispered, "Tyler's totally going anyway. I heard him talking to his friends." "That's his problem," I said. Rachel leaned down from the top bunk, her face upside down above me. "He's an idiot if he does. People really do get lost out there. The ranger station burned down 20 years ago. There's nothing to see except charred foundation and poison oak." "How do you know?" Maya asked. "My aunt used to work here as a counselor back in the 90s. She told me about it. Said a ranger lived there alone, got obsessed with studying something in the forest. One night the whole place just went up in flames with him inside. After that they built the new ranger station on the other side of the lake. Something about the way Rachel said it made the hair on my arms stand up. The cabin suddenly felt smaller, the darkness outside the windows deeper. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay there listening to the sounds of the forest through the thin walls. Crickets, the distant hoot of an owl, wind moving through the trees. At some point I heard footsteps outside, the crunch of leaves, whispered voices. I got up and looked out the window just in time to see Tyler and 3 other guys disappearing into the tree line, flashlights bobbing like fireflies. I should have woken Derek, should have said something. Instead, I climbed back into bed and eventually drifted off. The bell that woke us the next morning sounded different, more urgent. Derek was standing outside our cabin, looking like he hadn't slept. Everyone to the mess hall, now. We filed over with the other cabins, all of us confused and whispering. Derek stood at the front of the hall, and I could see the camp director, Mrs. Henderson, behind him with her phone pressed to her ear. Tyler Brennan didn't return to his cabin last night, Derek said. Neither did Mark Chen, James Porter, or David Sullivan. We need everyone to stay in camp while we search. If anyone knows where they went, speak up now. I felt sick. Maya grabbed my hand under the table. A kid from their cabin raised his hand. Tyler was talking about the old ranger station. Said he wanted to check it out. Derek's jaw tightened. Anyone else know about this? Silence. I should have said something then. Should have told him I'd seen them leave. But my throat had closed up, and the words wouldn't come. They organized search parties with the counselors while we stayed behind. The day dragged on forever. We sat around camp, nobody really talking, just waiting. Says Henderson tried to keep us occupied with activities, but nobody could focus. The forest that had seemed so peaceful before suddenly felt menacing, like it was hiding something just out of sight. Late afternoon, the search parties started coming back. No sign of the boys. Derek looked exhausted and worried. They'd found the ranger station ruins, he said, but no footprints, no indication anyone had been there recently. How is that possible? Rachel asked. If they went there, there'd be tracks. Derek just shook his head. They brought in an actual search and rescue team that evening. People with dogs and equipment and grim expressions. Mrs. Henderson called all our parents. I talked to my mom, tried to sound calm, told her I was fine, lied and said I didn't know anything about where the boys had gone. That night, none of us could sleep. We lay in our bunks, listening to the dogs barking in the distance, flashlights sweeping through the trees outside our window. This doesn't make sense, Maya whispered from her bunk. How did 4 people just vanish? Maybe they went somewhere else, Jamie suggested. But she didn't sound convinced. Rachel was silent above me. When I looked up, I could see her eyes open, staring at the ceiling. The next morning, they found Mark. He was standing in the middle of the trail about a mile from camp, completely still, staring at nothing. When the searchers approached him, he didn't react at first. Then he started screaming. They brought him back to camp, wrapped in a blanket, and immediately called an ambulance. I watched from the mess hall window as they loaded him into the vehicle. His eyes were wide and empty, and his lips were moving, but I couldn't hear what he was saying. Derek gathered us again. His face was pale, and his hands shook a little when he spoke. Mark is going to be okay, he said, though his voice suggested he wasn't sure. He's dehydrated and in shock, but physically he's unharmed. He couldn't tell us what happened or where the others are. We're continuing the search. I need everyone to stay calm and stay together. What did he say? Someone asked. When they found him, Derek hesitated. He was confused, disoriented. It happens when people are lost in the woods for extended periods. But that wasn't the whole truth. I could see it in his face. Rachel found me after lunch, pulled me aside near the cabins. I heard one of the counselors talking. Mark kept saying something about them following the wrong light, about someone calling your names from the trees. That's just shock, I said. Like Derek said, maybe. Rachel's green eyes were troubled. But my aunt told me something else about this place, about why the ranger really died. She said he'd been documenting something in his journals, some pattern he'd noticed. Campers reporting voices in the forest, lights that led them off trail. He thought it was some kind of phenomenon, maybe magnetic or atmospheric. Then one night he went out to investigate and never came back. They found the station burned down the next morning. That's just a story, I said. But my voice sounded weak even to me. Is it? 4 boys disappeared following a light into the woods. Mark comes back talking about lights and voices. That ranger spent months researching the same thing. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe there's a reason this place has so many rules about staying in camp after dark. That night they found David. He was at the bottom of a ravine, about 2 miles from the ranger station. Ruins, unconscious, but alive. Broken leg, multiple cuts and bruises, but alive. They airlifted him to a hospital. The good news spread through camp like wildfire. 2 found, 2 still missing. But when David woke up, he couldn't remember anything. Not leaving camp, not the ranger station, nothing. The last thing he remembered was going to bed in his cabin. The search continued. Days blurred together. Our parents wanted to pull us out, but the camp was on lockdown. Nobody in or out until the missing boys were found. The authorities had turned it into a crime scene investigation, thinking maybe something more sinister than getting lost was at play. I couldn't stop thinking about what Rachel had said. I started noticing things I'd overlooked before. The way the forest seemed to move differently at night, shadows shifting when there was no wind. How the bird calls would sometimes stop all at once, leading a silence that felt wrong. The way some of the trees near the camp boundary had marks on them, like someone had been scratching messages into the bark. On the 6th night after the disappearance, I woke up to someone shaking my shoulder. Rachel was leaning down from her bunk, her face barely visible in the darkness. "Alex, wake up, don't make noise." I sat up, heart pounding. "What's wrong?" "Look outside." I crawled to the window and peered out. At first, I didn't see anything unusual, just the dark outline of trees against a slightly lighter sky. Then I saw it. A light, pale blue and flickering, moving between the trees just beyond the camp boundary. It drifted slowly, almost lazily, like a lantern being carried by someone walking. "What is that?" Maya's voice came from beside me. She'd woken up too. "I don't know," Rachel whispered, "but I think we should tell Derek." The light stopped moving. For a moment, it just hung there in the darkness, pulsing gently. Then it began to move again, but this time toward the camp, toward our cabin. "Get away from the window," Rachel hissed. We scrambled back to our bunks. The light grew brighter, close enough now that it cast a faint glow through the window. I could hear something too, a sound like wind chimes, or maybe voices, too distant to make out words. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it was gone. The forest plunged back into darkness, and the sound stopped. None of us slept the rest of that night. As soon as the sun started to rise, we went to find Derek. He was already awake, sitting outside the counselor's cabin with his head in his hands. When we told him what we'd seen, he didn't look surprised. "We saw lights last night too," he admitted. 3 of them, moving through the forest in different directions. The search and rescue team tried to follow one, but it just vanished when they got close. "What are they?" Maya asked. Derek looked at us, and I could see genuine fear in his eyes. "I don't know, but Mrs. Henderson is calling off the search. This place isn't safe. They're going to evacuate the camp tomorrow morning, get everyone out of here." That should have been the end of it. One more night, then buses would come and take us all home. Tyler and James were still missing, but the official search would continue with professionals, not camp counselors and scared teenagers. But that night, something changed. I was lying in my bunk, not even trying to sleep, when I heard it. My name whispered from somewhere outside the cabin. Not shouted or yelled, just a soft voice carrying on the wind. "Alex?" I sat up. Maya was asleep in the next bunk, her breathing steady. Rachel was still, but I couldn't tell if she was awake. "Alex?" There it was again, clearer this time. Coming from the woods. I knew I shouldn't. Every horror movie I'd ever seen had taught me that walking toward the creepy voice in the dark forest was a terrible idea. But something about the voice felt familiar, almost comforting. It sounded like it was trying to help, like it was calling me home. I found myself getting out of bed, pulling on my shoes. Rachel's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. "Don't," she whispered. "Whatever you're hearing, don't listen to it." "How did you know?" "Because I hear it too. It's been calling to me for the past hour. It knows our names, Alex. It's using them to draw us out." I shook my head, trying to clear it. She was right. The pull I'd felt, that urge to follow the voice, it wasn't natural. It was like something was tugging at my brain, trying to override my common sense. "We need to wake everyone up," I said. "Tell Derek. If it's calling to us, it might be calling to others too." We moved quickly, waking Maya and the other girls, then heading to the other cabins. Derek was already making rounds. Having heard the voices himself, we gathered everyone in the mess hall, all 30 of us plus the counselors, and locked the doors. "Nobody leaves this building," Derek said. "I don't care what you hear out there. We stay together until morning." We sat there in the darkness, lit only by a few emergency lanterns. Outside, the voices continued. I could hear mine calling softly, patiently. It never got angry or demanding, just kept repeating my name like it had all the time in the world. Other kids started crying. Some covered their ears. A few had to be physically held back from the doors. So strong was the compulsion to answer the call. Then around 3 in the morning, the lights appeared. Dozens of them, surrounding the mess hall, pressing close to the windows. That same pale blue glow, pulsing in rhythm with the voices. They cast dancing shadows across the walls, and in those shadows, I could have sworn I saw shapes. Human figures, but wrong somehow. Too tall, limbs at odd angles, faces that were almost right, but not quite. Rachel grabbed my hand. Maya pressed against my other side. We sat there, terrified, watching the lights dance. "What do they want?" Jamie sobbed. Nobody had an answer. The lights stayed until dawn. The moment the first rays of sunlight broke through the trees, they vanished. The voices stopped. The forest went back to being just a forest. We all sat there, exhausted and shaken, as the morning light grew stronger. Derek was on his phone, talking rapidly to someone. Mrs. Henderson looked like she'd aged 10 years in one night. The buses arrived before noon. We packed in a daze, nobody talking much. I threw my stuff into my bag and got on the bus with Maya and Rachel, claiming seats near the back. As we pulled away from Camp Redwood, I looked out the window at the forest one last time. There, barely visible in the tree line, I saw Tyler and James. They were standing perfectly still, staring at the departing buses. Their faces were blank, expressionless. As I watched, they turned and walked deeper into the woods, disappearing between the trees. I grabbed Derek's arm as he walked past my seat. "They're here, Tyler and James. I just saw them." Derek looked where I was pointing, but they were already gone. He searched my face, and I could see him trying to decide whether to believe me. "You saw them?" "Yes. They were just standing there." Then they walked back into the forest. Derek pulled out his phone and made a call. They stopped the buses, sent search parties back to where I'd seen them, but they found nothing. No footprints, no sign anyone had been there at all. The official report said Tyler and James were never found. Mark recovered physically, but refused to talk about what happened. David never regained his memories. The camp was shut down permanently. The land sold off to private owners, who never developed it. Maya and I stayed in touch, but we never talked about that summer. Rachel moved away before senior year, and I never got her contact information. But sometimes, on quiet nights, I still hear it. My name whispered from somewhere far away. A voice calling me back to the woods, patient and persistent. It knows where I live now. It knows where I'll always be. And the worst part is, some small part of me wants to answer. I'm 23 now, 5 years past that summer. I'm in college, studying engineering, living a normal life. But I keep maps of national forests on my wall, marked with pins where unexplained disappearances have occurred. The pattern is there if you know how to look for it. Clusters of missing hikers, people who walked off trail and never came back. Reports of strange lights, of voices calling from the trees. Last week I got a message on social media from an account with no profile picture. Just 2 words, "Come home." I blocked it, but that night I heard the voice again. Louder this time, more insistent. When I looked out my apartment window, I saw a pale blue light flickering in the parking lot. It's found me, after all this time, after all the distance I've put between myself and that place. It's found me. Maya calls me every day now to check in. She hears it too. So does Mark, who finally broke his silence and reached out to us both. We're all hearing the call, all feeling the pull. Rachel was right about one thing. The forest isn't done with us, and I'm starting to think it never will be. I didn't sleep for 3 days after that message. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those lights dancing outside the mess hall windows, heard my name carried on a wind that shouldn't exist in my locked apartment. Maya started calling me twice a day, instead of once, and I could hear the strain in her voice getting worse. "It's getting closer," she told me on Thursday morning. "I saw one outside my dorm room last night, just hovering there, right at eye level. My roommate didn't see anything. She thought I was losing it." "You're not losing it," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure anymore. Mark texted me yesterday. He said he's been researching, trying to find out what this is. And he found something. He wants us to meet him. We agreed on a coffee shop halfway between our schools. A busy place with lots of people and bright fluorescent lights. The kind of place where nothing strange could happen. Mark got there first, and I almost didn't recognize him. The confident, athletic kid from camp had been replaced by someone gaunt and hollow-eyed, with the kind of haunted look that never really goes away. He brought a laptop and a folder, stuffed with papers. The moment we sat down, he opened it and started spreading documents across the table. "I've been documenting everything," he said, without preamble. "Every case I can find. Similar to ours. There are dozens going back over a century. Different forests, different states, but always the same pattern. Lights in the woods. Voices calling names. People disappearing, or coming back wrong." "Wrong how?" Maya asked. Mark pulled out a newspaper clipping from 1987. The headline read, "Boy Found After Week in Woods Speaks Only Backwards." Another from 1952, "Missing Hiker Returns, Cannot Recognize Own Family." And another from 1923, "Child Recovered from Forest Claims. She lived there for years, despite being gone only 3 days." "They all come back changed," Mark said, "if they come back at all, and the ones who don't return. Sometimes people see them years later, still in the forest, not aging, not leaving, just waiting." I thought of Tyler and James, standing motionless in the trees as our buses pulled away. "There's more," Mark continued. He pulled up a scanned document on his laptop, old and barely legible. "I tracked down the Rangers' journals, the ones from the guy who died in the fire. His family donated them to a historical society after his death. I had to call in a lot of favors to get copies. The journal entries were disturbing. The ranger, whose name was Thomas Carver, had started noticing the pattern 2 years before his death. Campers reporting lights and voices, people wandering off trail in a daze. He'd begun to suspect something was deliberately luring people into the forest. The final entry was dated the night he died. I found the source," Carver had written, in increasingly frantic handwriting. "The lights converge in a point deep in the forest, a clearing where the trees grow in a perfect circle. I believe it's some kind of threshold, a crossing point between what we understand as reality and something else. The voices are strongest there. They've been calling to me for weeks now, and I've resisted, but I need to know what's on the other side. I need to understand what wants us so badly. If I don't return, burn these journals. Don't let anyone else go looking. Some doors aren't meant to be opened." He went to the clearing that night, Mark said, and the ranger station burned down. But here's the thing. The fire department report said the fire started from the inside, in multiple places simultaneously, but there was no evidence of accelerant. It was like the building just spontaneously combusted. "So what do we do?" I asked. "Keep running? Keep hiding?" "I don't think we can hide anymore," Mark said quietly. "I tried. I moved 3 times, changed schools, but it always finds me. The calls are getting stronger. Last night I almost walked out of my apartment. My roommate had to physically hold me back. Maya's hands were shaking around her coffee cup. So we just wait until it takes us." "No." Mark's jaw set with determination. "We go back. We finish what Carver started." "Are you insane?" Maya's voice rose, and several people at nearby tables looked over. She lowered it to an urgent whisper. "We barely made it out the first time. You want us to walk right back in?" "I want us to end this," Mark said, "because it's never going to stop. We're Mark now, and it's going to keep calling until we answer. I'd rather face it on our terms than wait for it to drag me out of bed one night." I should have argued, should have told him he was crazy, and walked away. But deep down, I knew he was right. The calls were getting stronger. The lights were getting closer. It was only a matter of time. "If we do this," I said slowly, "we need more information. We need to know what we're actually dealing with." Mark nodded. "I've been talking to someone, a folklorist who specializes in forest phenomena. She's studied cases like ours all over the world. She calls them Finn places, locations where the barrier between our world and something else is weak. She thinks whatever's calling to us isn't really malicious. It's just trying to bring us through the word. She doesn't know, but she said the ones who come back wrong, they're stuck between worlds. Part of them went through, part of them stayed behind. That's why they're not quite human anymore." The chill ran through me. "And if we go back? If we go to this clearing?" "She thinks we can close it. There are rituals, protections, iron and salt, the classic stuff. But someone has to go there, to the source, and perform them. It has to be someone who's been marked, someone the forest recognizes. This is insane, Maya said, but there was no conviction in her voice anymore. She was scared, but she was also desperate. We all were. We spent the next week preparing. Mark's folklorist contact, a woman named Dr. Chen, sent us detailed instructions. We gathered materials, iron nails, pure salt, sage, and other items that felt ridiculous to buy, but that Dr. Chen insisted were essential. She also sent us a map, painstakingly reconstructed from Carver's journal entries, showing the way to the clearing. I tried to tell my parents I was going on a camping trip with friends. My mom heard the fear in my voice. Alex, honey, you haven't been camping since. She trailed off. We never talked about that summer directly. Are you sure about this? I have to, Mom. I can't explain why, but I have to. She was quiet for a long moment. Your grandmother used to tell me stories about the old country, about forests that were alive in ways we don't understand anymore. She said sometimes the woods remember us, and we have to remember them back. Show them we're not afraid. Be careful, baby. The three of us met at the old camp entrance 2 weeks after our coffee shop meeting. The gate was chained shut, and a faded sign declared the property condemned. We climbed over it just as the sun was starting to set. The camp was in ruins. The cabins had collapsed in on themselves, their roofs caved in, and walls rotting. The mess hall was just a foundation now, overtaken by weeds and saplings. Nature was reclaiming it all, erasing every trace that humans had ever been here. We should set up base camp before dark, Mark said. He brought camping gear, a proper tent and supplies. Dr. Chen said we need to approach the clearing at dawn. That's when the barrier is most stable. We found a relatively clear spot and set up the tent. None of us talked much. The sun sank lower, and the forest around us grew darker. I kept expecting to hear my name called, to see the lights appear, but everything was quiet. Almost too quiet. Maybe it's not here anymore, Maya said hopefully. Maybe whatever it was is gone. Mark shook his head. It's here. It's just waiting. He was right. Around midnight, the first light appeared. Then another. Then dozens. Surrounding our tent in a wide circle, keeping their distance, but making their presence known. The voices started soon after. Alex, Maya, Mark. Over and over. Patient and persistent. But they didn't come closer. It was like they knew we were already committed, already coming to them. They could afford to wait. None of us slept. We sat in the tent, backs pressed together, clutching our iron nails and bags of salt like they were weapons. Dr. Chen had said iron disrupted whatever energy the lights used, that salt created a barrier they couldn't cross. We'd poured a circle of it around our tent, and so far, it seemed to be holding. When dawn finally broke, the lights faded, the voices stopped. We emerged from the tent exhausted but determined. Mark checked his map one more time. The clearing is about 3 miles northeast. Carver's notes say we follow the old fire road for 2 miles, then head straight into the forest. We should reach it by mid-morning. We packed essential supplies, the salt, the iron, Dr. Chen's instructions, water, and flashlights, and started walking. The fire road was overgrown, but still visible, a scar through the forest that nature hadn't quite healed. As we walked, I noticed the trees getting older, thicker. The canopy overhead grew so dense that even midday felt like twilight. At the 2-mile mark, Mark stopped. This is where we go off trail. The forest ahead looked impenetrable, a wall of undergrowth and twisted branches. But when we pushed forward, the vegetation seemed to part for us, like the woods were welcoming us in. This doesn't feel right, Maya whispered. It's too easy. She was right. We should have been fighting our way through brambles and deadfall. But instead, we found ourselves on what almost seemed like a path. The trees grew in odd formations, creating a natural corridor that led deeper into the forest. It's guiding us, Mark said. It wants us to find the clearing. We walked for what felt like hours, though my phone insisted only 30 minutes had passed. Time felt wrong here, elastic and unreliable. The forest around us had gone completely silent. No birds, no insects, no rustling of small animals. In the underbrush, just our footsteps and our breathing. Then we saw it. The clearing appeared suddenly, as if we'd stepped through an invisible curtain. It was exactly as Carver had described, a perfect circle where the trees grew in a ring, their trunks twisted and gnarled as if shaped by something other than nature. The ground inside the circle was bare earth, dark and rich. with no grass or vegetation. And in the center stood a tree unlike any I'd ever seen. Its bark was pale, almost white, and it seemed to pulse with a faint light from within. Its branches reached up and out in patterns that hurt to look at too long, geometries that didn't quite make sense. "The threshold," Mark breathed. As we watched, the air around the tree began to shimmer. The pale blue lights started appearing, dozens of them, emerging from the tree itself. And in the lights, I could see shapes. Human figures, translucent and flickering. Tyler stood there, unchanged from 5 years ago, and James beside him, and others, so many others, stretching back through time. Children in old-fashioned clothes. A man in a ranger's uniform who had to be Carver. All of them frozen, trapped in the moment they'd answered the call. "Oh God," Maya said, and I heard the tears in her voice. "They're all still here." One of the figures moved. Tyler turned his head, looking directly at us. His mouth opened, and I heard his voice, distant and echoing. "It's beautiful here," he said. "Everything makes sense. All the questions have answers. Don't you want to know?" "Don't listen," Mark said urgently. He pulled out Dr. Chen's instructions, hand shaking. "We need to do this now." The ritual was complex. We had to create a circle of salt around the tree, drive iron nails into the earth at specific points, burn sage while reciting words in a language I didn't recognize. It seemed impossible, like something out of a fantasy novel. But we'd come this far. We started with the salt. Maya and I moved around the tree, pouring it in a careful line while Mark read from Dr. Chen's notes. The figures in the lights watched us, and more kept appearing. I saw faces I recognized from old missing persons, reports I'd researched. A girl who'd vanished in 1973, a boy from 1955. They were all here, all preserved in this impossible space. As we completed the circle, the tree began to pulse faster. The lights grew brighter. The voices started again, but this time they weren't calling our names. They were pleading. "Don't close it," they said. "Don't leave us here. We can't get back without it open. Please." I faltered, the bag of salt slipping in my hands. "Mark, they're trapped. If we close this, they'll be stuck here forever." "They're already stuck," Mark said, but his voice wavered. "We're just preventing more people from joining them." "No," Maya said suddenly. "Dr. Chen was wrong. This isn't about closing it. It's about choice." She dropped her bag of salt and walked toward the circle. Mark and I both shouted, but she raised her hand. "Look at them," she said. "Really look. They're not suffering. They're not in pain." Tyler said it himself. "They have answers. They have something we don't. Maybe this place isn't a trap. Maybe it's an offering." "Maya, don't," I begged. But she'd already crossed the salt line. The moment her foot touched the bare earth inside the circle, the light surged toward her. She gasped, her body going rigid, and for a horrible moment I thought we'd lost her. Then she relaxed. Her face changed, became peaceful in a way I'd never seen. When she looked back at us, her eyes were different, deeper, like she could see things we couldn't. "It's not what you think," she said softly. "It's not taking us. It's asking. Some of us are meant to stay. Some of us belong here, in the spaces between. But it has to be a choice." She turned to Tyler's figure. "You could leave if you want. You all can. But you have to decide." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, some of the figures began to move. They walked toward the edge of the clearing, and as they crossed the tree line, they solidified, became real again. A little girl who couldn't have been more than 7 stumbled out and collapsed, crying. A teenage boy from the 80s emerged, looking around in confusion. Carver himself stepped out of the lights, suddenly old and tired, and sank to his knees. But others stayed. Tyler and James remained where they were, along with dozens more. They looked at us one last time, and I understood. They'd chosen this. Whatever this place was, whatever it offered, they wanted it more than they wanted to come back. "The ones who stay are anchors," Maya said, still in that calm, distant voice. "They keep the threshold stable for the ones who need it. But there have been too many anchors, too much weight on one side. That's why it's been pulling so hard, trying to balance itself. It needs people to choose freely, not be lured or tricked." "Maya, come back," I said. "Please." She smiled at me. "I want to stay, Alex. I've always felt like I didn't quite fit in the regular world. Maybe this is where I'm supposed to be." "No," Mark said firmly. He walked forward, stopped just outside the salt circle. "If you stay, you do it knowing what you're giving up. Your family, your future, your life. Is whatever's in there worth more than all of that? Maya hesitated. The certainty in her face flickered. I don't know, but I want to find out. Then come back when you've had time to really think about it, I said. Not under the influence of this place. Come back to the real world, live your life, and if you still want to return, you can make that choice with a clear head. For a long moment, Maya stood frozen. Then slowly, she stepped back across the salt line. The moment she did, she gasped, and her knees buckled. Mark and I caught her, and we could feel her trembling. Oh God, she whispered. It was so beautiful. It showed me everything, all the connections, all the patterns. It was like understanding the universe. We need to finish this, Mark said. We completed the ritual, though I understood now it was different than Dr. Chen had intended. We weren't sealing the threshold, we were regulating it, making it so the forest could only call to those who were already seeking it, not innocent people who wandered too close. When we drove the last iron nail into the ground, it spoke the final words. The trees pulsing slowed. The lights dimmed. The clearing became just a clearing again, ordinary and still. The people who'd chosen to leave were scattered around the edge of the forest, confused and disoriented. We'd have to help them, get them back to civilization, help them reconnect with lives that had moved on without them. It would be complicated, and messy, and probably involve a lot of difficult questions. But as we started gathering them up, I noticed something. The little girl who'd emerged first was holding a woman's hand. A woman who'd stepped out of the lights after her. Her mother, I realized. She'd been taken decades ago, probably while searching for her daughter. They'd both been trapped, but now they'd both chosen to return together. And Carver, the old ranger, sat against a tree with tears running down his face. I can finally rest, he said. I can finally go home. The walk back to our camp took hours. We had 8 people who'd chosen to leave, ranging from the 7-year-old girl to Carver, who had to be supported between Mark and myself. Maya led the way, quiet and subdued, clearly processing what she'd experienced. When we finally reached the camp ruins, police cars and search and rescue vehicles were waiting. Someone had seen our car at the closed entrance, and reported it. We were greeted with a mixture of relief and confusion, as people recognized some of the missing individuals we'd brought back. The authorities had questions. So many questions. We told them we'd found these people lost in the woods, that they'd been surviving out there, and we'd stumbled across them. It was a weak story that nobody really believed, but what else could we say? In the chaos of reunions and medical checks and police interviews, I lost track of Maya. When I finally found her, she was standing at the edge of the forest, staring into the trees. Are you okay? I asked. I keep feeling the pull, she admitted. Part of me wants to go back, to cross over completely. It's taking everything I have to stay here. Will it always be like this? I don't know. Dr. Chen said the call fades for people who choose to leave. But I didn't really choose, did I? You and Mark talked me out of it. We gave you perspective. The choice was still yours. She turned to look at me, and I could see the struggle in her eyes. What if I made the wrong one? I didn't have an answer for that. The aftermath was complicated. The people we'd brought back had to reintegrate into a world that had changed without them. The little girl, Emily, had parents who'd never stopped searching for her. Her mother had been missing for 30 years, and coming back meant discovering her husband had remarried. Her other children were adults. Her entire life had been lived by someone else. Carver had no one left. His family was gone, his friends dead. He was a man out of time, haunted by memories of a choice he'd regretted for decades. Some of them adjusted better than others. The teenager from the 80s, a kid named Derek, actually seemed excited by all the technology he'd missed. Emily clung to her mother, grateful just to be together again. But I noticed something troubling. Over the following weeks, 2 of the people we'd rescued went missing again. They'd simply walked away from their new lives, and disappeared. I had a feeling I knew where they'd gone. Back to the clearing, back through the threshold. Mark, Maya, and I stayed in touch, bound together by what we'd experienced. Mark threw himself into his research, documenting everything, trying to find other thin places before someone else got hurt. He created a database, a network of people who'd encountered similar phenomena. Maya struggled the most. She quit school and moved back home, but I could tell she wasn't really present. Part of her was still in that clearing, still seeing those impossible patterns and connections. 3 months after our trip to the clearing, she called me at 2 a.m. I'm going back, she said without preamble. I've thought about it, lived with the decision, and I'm going back. Maya, my choice, Alex. You said I should make it with a clear head. And I have. This world, our reality. It feels like a shadow now, like I'm only experiencing half of what's possible. I need to know the rest. You might not be able to come back. I know, that's part of the choice. I wanted to argue, to convince her to stay, but I remembered what she'd said in the clearing. Some people are meant for the spaces between. Maybe Maya was one of them. When? I asked. Tomorrow night. I wanted to say goodbye. I'm coming with you. Not to stop you, just to see you off. We met at the camp entrance at sunset. Mark came too, Heavy insisted when I told him. The three of us hiked to the clearing one last time, carrying flashlights and memories. The clearing was different now, quieter. The trees still pulsed with that inner light, but gently, peacefully. The barrier we'd created was holding. No voices called out, no lights tried to lure us in. Maya stood at the edge of the salt circle. We'd broken it in places during the rescue, and no one had repaired it. She could walk right through if she wanted. I don't expect you to understand, she said, but this feels right, like coming home. I think I do understand, Mark said quietly. Some part of me wants it too. The answers, the peace, but I have work to do here first. People to help, patterns to document. Maybe someday I'll follow you. Maya smiled. I hope you do. She hugged us both, and I felt tears on my cheeks. Then she turned and walked into the circle. The moment she crossed the threshold, the lights flared up to greet her. She looked back once, her face radiant and at peace, and then she stepped toward the tree. She didn't disappear all at once, like I expected. Instead, she became translucent, layered, like I was seeing her existing in multiple places simultaneously. Then she was gone, and a new light flickered among the others around the tree. Mark and I stood there for a long time. Finally, he spoke. Do you think she made the right choice? I think she made her choice, I said. That's what matters. We left the clearing and hiked back to our cars. I haven't been back since, though I think about it sometimes. About Maya, living in that space between worlds, understanding things I can't comprehend. About Tyler and James, and all the others who chose to stay. The call stopped after that night. Whatever the forest wanted for me, it was satisfied. I went back to school, finished my degree, started a normal life. But I kept Mark's database bookmarked, and sometimes I read the reports. Other thin places, other thresholds, other people facing the same choice Maya did. Last week I got a letter. No return address, but I recognized Maya's handwriting on the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a message. It's everything I hoped it would be, and more. I've learned so much, seen so much. Tyler says hello. He wanted you to know he doesn't regret his choice, and neither do I. The door is always open if you want to visit, but I understand if you'd rather stay where you are. Some people are meant for the threshold, others are meant to guard it from the outside. I think you're a guardian, Alex. Thank you for giving me the chance to choose. Also, something's changed. The threshold is getting stronger, more stable. Dr. Chen was wrong about a lot of things, but she was right about one. These places are real, and they're not going away. More people are going to find them or be found by them. Someone needs to help them understand what they're facing. Someone needs to make sure they choose freely and with full knowledge. I think that someone is you. With love from the space between, Maya. I've read that letter 100 times. She's right, of course. Mark can document the thin places, but someone needs to be there when people encounter them. Someone who understands what they're facing, who can explain the choice without judgment. I've started training, learning everything I can about these phenomena, about the folklore, and the science, and everything in between. I've visited 3 other thin places so far, helped a dozen people make informed decisions about whether to cross over or stay. Some choose to stay in our world, some choose to cross. I don't judge either choice. I just make sure they know what they're deciding. My mom was right. The forests remember us, and we have to remember them back. Show them we're not afraid, but also show them respect, understanding. These thin places, these thresholds, they're not evil. They're not even really dangerous. Not if you approach them with knowledge and awareness. They're just different. Another way of existing, another mode of being. And some people, like Maya, like Tyler, like all those lights in the clearing, are meant for that existence. But it has to be a choice. That's what I do now. I help people choose. I'm a guardian, like Maya said, standing at the threshold, 1 foot in each world, making sure everyone who crosses that line does it with their eyes open. And someday, maybe when my work here is done, maybe I'll make my own choice. But not yet. Not yet.